Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries, Resilience Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, DB, and I have TikTok's pretty realist, Shannon. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
The algorithm gods must align perfectly because I came across one of your videos and you captured a data point about a real conversation about suicide. And it piqued my interest. I've done a lot of work. I've actually counseled a lot of folks who were in suicidal situations, and the numbers, it just caught me off guard. You talked about the high level rates of suicide, and I pulled up the numbers. I'm going to read some numbers. Suicide was the second leading cause of death for those 10 to 14 years old, 20 to 34, and the third leading cause for people ages 15 to 19. And then the highest rate was among men 75 and older. And the numbers went up from 2022 and 2023, the highest ever since 1941, which we think about World War II in that era. And my goodness, first, I just want to say thanks for pointing that out and using your platform to highlight that. What drew you to that? What caused you to say, you know what, this is a big deal?
Because it's not a focus. It's not anything that's really being talked about. And I feel like that is something that I feel like that really during this whole campaign, I really wish that both candidates could have touched on it a lot more because it is a problem. The loneliness epidemic is a real thing, and it's something that is not being talked about. We never really healed from the pandemic. We haven't. A lot of people are still struggling with grasping the fact that, oh my God, like I lost family members, I lost friends, I lost my job, and I'm still not able to really get that source of income that I once had before the pandemic. I had to downsize from my 4 or 5 bedroom home, and now I can't afford that. And now I'm living in a 1 bedroom apartment. The divorce rate increased because of that. And then social media plays a big part in it. And then there's a community, the community that we once had. I remember walking outside and being able to know my neighbors, knowing that, I have Miss Lucy down the street who sits on her porch and waters her grass all the time, or just seeing kids outside playing. You're not seeing that anymore. So we don't really have that connection with other people like we once had. And I think that also plays a part. And when it comes to our senior citizens aren't even really able to retire with grace because the cost of living is expensive right now. And their benefits is not able to cover their living. You're seeing people who are 70, 80 years old right now working in Dollar General and Dollar Tree right now because their income is not able to cover their living expenses. And it's affecting them mentally on top of health issues. That's affecting them mentally. So I do think that we took a hard hit, and the reason why those numbers are increasing is because we never really got our legs back after the pandemic.
I talk a lot about what does healthy look like here on the show. How do we get to a place of healthy?
That's a really good question. I think that we get to a place of healthy by realizing that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not have all the answers at first. And honestly, you'll never really have all the answers. Every day is a constant. You're growing constantly. You're rediscovering yourself constantly. Even at my age, I'm 42 years old, and every day I'm rediscovering something new about myself. Every day, it's another step. It's another step. You're never going to really have it figured all the way out. But as long as you take those monumental steps to being like, okay, what I didn't do yesterday, let me see if I could get that accomplished today. I feel like that if I could get it accomplished today and I could do my best at it, then that's a goal that you've accomplished. Set small goals, don't set big goals for yourself, and then just realize that, like, hey, long as you give your best every day, can't nobody stop you.
How important is community to you?
Very important, and that's what a lot of us are lacking right now. Like, I feel like that not having that community that you used to growing up. It definitely does affect you in a lot of ways, but a lot of us have been blessed to have gained a tribe, even though it may be online. Even though you may have a support system that's online, as long as you have a support system of some sort, long as you have people that you could reach out to when you're feeling down, when you feel as if you need some type of, you need someone to pour into you, because everybody needs somebody to pour into you. On a day-to-day basis, we may not realize that we have a tendency to pour into others, and sometimes we forget to pour into ourselves. And I think that that's important. That's what community is about, because we're all interconnected in some way. And when you don't have that, you feel empty. And that's when you start having those thoughts, as if you don't feel as if you're not really standing on anything. So having that community is important, because you're constantly having that, someone's pouring into you and you're pouring into back, and it's just beneficial for both.
Yeah, I actually wrote a book a couple of years ago called The Identity ATM. And in that I talk about we are like, our savings and checking account is our self-esteem and confidence. And we need people to be banks in our lives to deposit into us. And like you touched on that exact thing, we need people to pour into us. We need people to connect with. So when we're making decisions, we don't make it out of shame. We can make it from a healthy perspective. What do you find as the most alarming thing when you see those numbers? Is it the young kids, the 10 to 14? I mean, I understand what you said about the elder generation and just they can't retire. But I was curious, like, what do you think was surprising when you came across those numbers?
Definitely the young, the youth, because I mean, I do remember hearing about teenagers, 16, 17 and up, just when I was younger. But you got
Yeah.
babies like 9, 10 years old that's feeling as if that's a way out, because they don't feel as if they're measuring up in life, and they haven't even lived life yet.
Haven't
Uh,
even begun.
they
Yeah.
haven't even begun.
Yeah.
And that was alarming. My brother had a friend whose son committed suicide, and he was only 9.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
that's something that really grabbed me too, because I'm like, God, what could be going through his mind as somebody that age, who, like, what have you experienced so much that could make you be like, I don't even want to see my 10th birthday. I don't even want to go forward to that right there is a lot. It's a lot to deal with. That's why I say it's an epidemic, and
Yeah.
there needs to be more focus on it.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I reached out was I was just so appreciative of you using your voice, using your messaging platform, and just to kind of raise awareness to that. I think that's where it starts.
Yeah.
Is we need more people to be vocal on, hey, this is happening right in front of our faces, and
Yeah.
we can't be blind to it. I mean, pain might be invisible for some. We might not be able to see the pain that someone's going through, but I look at it like let's say you're like, a good analogy would be your voice being like a lighthouse, just raising awareness. People are going through the storms, but if they can see the light from the lighthouse, hey, look, there's a safe harbor here. Let me help guide you out of the storm. I just feel like more people should do that, and I appreciated you bringing that up at such a critical time that we're in, a time of transition. Yeah, I welcomed you by saying, Happy New Year. And what did you have to respond to me with?
I said this is a practice new year. The new year begins when things start to bloom. So the new year actually starts in March, in spring, when flowers start to bloom, when the weather starts to change. So this is the moment right now to kind of just figure out. You can kind of mess up right now. So it's okay if you didn't get that resolution going on. It's okay if you started a diet and you still kind of dug into the Ben and Jerry's for right now. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's all right. You can start back over.
And I like that because that allows new things to grow. And I feel like that ties right into the theme. Like, I wasn't even scripted or planned.
Yeah.
So for anybody's listening, you can dial 988, go to your doctor, get help, reach out to, somebody, a friend. But I like that approach that you just said. Let's get through this season and then start the new year.
Yeah, you got to take it one day at a time. You
Mm.
have to, because it's just we are in a very transitional moment in our lives, in our country, in history. We're living through some historical times. I said the other day, I'm tired of living through historical, but we are like we're living in historical times.
Yeah.
But I just look at it like now is the time for us to embrace the transition, embrace it. Don't fight it. Because anything that doesn't change, anything that doesn't grow, it's just gonna wither away. And change is necessary. It's what's needed. It needs to happen. It has to.
That's a great point. In the midst of so much change, whether it's chaotic, I mean, there's talk about hurricanes and fires and transition of political power. How do you not get caught up in the chaos of it all and really be able to stay grounded? I think it really kind of starts with treating connection as essential.
Yes, absolutely. Especially as someone, I'm a baby in politics. That's something that I took up within the last year, just bringing my voice into politics. And I've gotten to a community that's very diverse, which has helped me to stay grounded. But it's been an emotional thing because it's a new world that I wasn't really quite experienced in, but I'm glad I got into it because just like with this topic right here, it lets me know that like this isn't a black and white issue. This isn't an issue that's based on race. This is a human issue. This is something that affects everybody. It's not just
That's right.
one person. It's not just one age. It's not a gender. It's something that's affecting us all because we all dealt with the pandemic. We all were going through it, and we all know somebody who may possibly is dealing with depression, who may be bipolar. So this is something that affects all of us. And once we get to the point to where human and mankind and race, none of that matters, that the human race is something that we all have to focus on, and we all have to worry about that right now.
And you bring up a great point of the role of politics when it comes to the mental health, the emotional health, the well being of the citizens, suicide prevention, because I, I love politics. I think there's a lot of confusion about politics and politicians. When I talk to someone about politics, I'm talking about how do we get running water? How do we get trash picked up for around our city? How do we engage the opioid crisis? How are we dealing with mental health? But you're right; those are things that are not just one political party has to deal with. These are things for both sides of the aisle.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah. So
absolutely.
I appreciate you highlighting that in particular.
Goodness, it was difficult. It definitely it was challenging. It played a lot into your mental space. You have to be mentally strong to deal with politics, especially being a Black American, and being conservative. It's difficult, but at the same time, you also know that you mean well. This is the first time ever where people weren't able to actually be themselves and nobody judged them for it or criticized them for it. So it made you feel as if you had to pick sides. So you had to learn how to be true to yourself. And even with anything, you have to be true to yourself. And I think that by far it ties into this topic. It's being true to yourself and not allowing outside forces to tell you who you need to be, what you need to look like, how you need to think. Just being true to yourself and realizing, like, I don't care what anybody says. You may not agree with it, but I agree with it. There was one point where that was okay. Who you voted for, I might not agree with that person, but I love you anyway. It's Thanksgiving. Come over. This was the first time where people was like, no, I don't vote for that person. You can't come to Thanksgiving. I don't vote for that person, and our relationship is over. So that played a big part in a lot of people who are mentally crashing because it ruined a lot of families. So I'm looking forward to the transition, and hopefully those families could be repaired, those relationships could be repaired, and we could get back to realizing that it's okay to be different and let people have their differences.
That's such a great message, and I appreciate you stopping by to share that with us. And
Thanks for
I look
having
forward
me.
to hearing more from you, and following you on Instagram and TikTok. At Pretty Realist, and
Yes.
yeah, no, keep sharing those great messages. Very very thought provoking, and like I said, that just kind of caught my attention. Thank you so much for doing what you do, and I
Thanks for
just
having
want to
me.
encourage you to keep getting after it.
Thank you. I appreciate you so much. And you enjoy the rest of your day.
All
Thank
right,
you to
you
your
too.
listeners.
Just want to give a shout out saying thanks to TikTok's Pretty Realist. Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today. I intentionally wanted to keep this discussion focused on just acknowledging what's happening. I think before we can actually get into trying to figure out why or figure out how to address it or what to do, because I think we're so quick with doing that a lot of times. I think the first step, and hopefully this is just that first step, is just bringing awareness to the issue. Suicide is an issue in our country, and we need to learn how to be resilient. And that resilient is such a massive conversation. Resilience in your relationships, in your marriages, in your work relationships. That's why I'm always talking about your personal resilience and how that you bring a lot of that emotional equity into your organization. So there's not just an organizational resilience of like, how do we keep, being a business, but you need employees, you need people who are going to work for you, but you want healthy employees. Please reach out if you are struggling. 988. You can call, you can text, but shoot me an email. We can connect offline. bnbresilience@gmail.com. I've worked with a lot of folks who are struggling with suicide ideations, and I would love to just converse with you and really make sure you have the resources around you that you need. But again, going back to just the topic of today's conversation, bringing awareness to what is happening. The second leading cause of death for 10 to 14-year-olds is suicide. I can't even wrap my head around that, and just breaks my heart of, what are we doing? What messages are we sending? How are they receiving that message? But first, we just got to acknowledge that it's happening. And for males 75 years and older to just say, I'm done with it. Like, I don't even know what to think about that. I'm still even having to process that myself. So let's get after it. Let's bring attention to it, and then we'll bring more people on board. And I know we have some exciting guests coming up this summer that will, when we get to that point of now, what do we do now that we're aware and we figured out why, let's figure out what to do about it and really, strive to making our country an emotionally, mentally safe place to live, because that is way too much. Those numbers are way too high, the highest in our country's history. And that doesn't sit right with me. And hopefully that doesn't sit right with you. So kindness is underrated. So be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And let's just continue to fight the good fight and strive for resilience. Until next time, EB out here.